Good morning. So anyway, here I am, Miss Tyler. It's been a while, but I ran into a problem. I kept trying to start teaching the New Testament, and it wasn't working. It wasn't working because, frankly, I was doing it wrong. So you never saw the videos and the PowerPoints that I prepared. I found that I can't do what I was doing last year and just pulling little tidbits, little archaeology, this and that, and giving the kids something to be excited about. It wasn't going to work. Frankly, last year with the Torah portions, I had to sanitize just about everything because I was teaching for a general audience. You know, if you ask the question, is the Bible family friendly? Well, it was family friendly to the people it was originally written to, people living in the ancient world. I mean, in Yeshua, Jesus' time, 5-year-olds were learning the first 5 books of the Bible by heart. Yes, even the parts about Lot and his daughters and Dinah and a lot of stuff, a lot of terrible stuff, Sodom and Gomorrah. They would learn that by heart. It's only in recent, centuries that our society has changed to the point where we consider the Bible to be not family friendly. So, I've got a problem. In ancient times, they would teach the whole thing, and they would teach it to kids, little beansy kids, but our society has changed. Now, I can't teach the New Testament the way I was teaching the Old Testament, and there's a reason, and it's not because the Old Testament isn't important. As a matter of fact, it's absolutely, every page of the Bible is absolutely as important as every other page. And teaching, the Torah and the law and Moses and Abraham is vital to your children's understanding and to your understanding. We can't understand what Yeshua came to do and what Yeshua, the life that he lived and would still live, unless we understand, because it's a whole picture. Jesus didn't come to do away with the Old Testament at all. Without the Old Testament, there is no... we get into this problem. But I can't treat Yeshua like a flannel graph character, like someone who wasn't really entirely real. I want your kids to know him as he was. What I found that I need to do is I need to go through the New Testament chapter by chapter, and sometimes it's going to take us a month to go through a chapter, or 2 months to go through a chapter, and that's just the way it is. I want your kids to know our Savior. I can't leave anything out. And so now we have a problem, because you may not approve of some of the things that get taught in the Bible to teach to little kids. And that's your call. I am not judging you. I'm not saying anything. But I'm teaching not only 5-year-olds, but I'm also teaching 18-year-olds. This is context for kids, not context for 5-year-olds. So what do? Well, I'm going to do the only thing I can, and that is institute a rating system. So from now on, starting with the very next episode, which is genealogies, we're going to talk about the importance of genealogies and why Yeshua would have actually had his genealogy memorized, and we can see that from a lot of different cultures in the world. And why it's okay that generations are skipped, and why, they wouldn't have really cared. We care, and I'll tell you why we care, and I'll tell you why they didn't care. Sometimes things that are important to us and that we think are truth, they would go, what? And we can't put our stuff above theirs. Anyway, rabbit trail. Anyway, obviously, with just talking about a basic genealogy, that's going to be G-rated material. There's going to be PG-rated material. There's going to be PG-13 rated material. And that can be either sex or violence, okay? Because this is the Bible, and there's a lot of sex in the Bible. There's a lot of violence in the Bible. The crucifixion, when we get to the crucifixion, and we're going to cover it in a very real way, that's R-rated material. And if you read Honor and Shame in the Bible, you know I don't pull any punches. I post parental warnings, and I say, look, you may want to tone this down. You may not want to read. But then I've got my friend who read it to her 7-year-old and 5-year-old. They were like, the kids were crying at the table, but At the same time, it changed them, and it changed the way they look at our Savior. Kids would have known this in ancient times. This wouldn't have been hidden or shielded from them, especially in honor-shame cultures today. They're not going to hide that stuff from their kids. They're going to show them, what Messiah did. So anyway, we've got a lot of content, and we've got a large age range for kids. I am no longer willing to kind of sacrifice the older kids and what they need to know to keep it safe for 5-year-olds. It's not fair, and it's not reasonable, and it takes a valuable tool out of your hands as parents if I'm only covering this stuff that's kind of on the periphery of the Bible. And it was fun last year, and I hope that your kids got a real kind of idea about why we can know the Bible was written when it says it was written and by the people it said it was written by. But this year, we're talking about the Son of God who died for us, who died for me, who died for you, who died for your children. There's no one more important who was ever born. There's no one more important who has ever died. And there's certainly no one more important who has ever or will ever rise again. So I want to take Yeshua incredibly seriously. And you know what? I'm probably going to be teaching the New Testament for the rest of my life. I might be. This may take years, until I get different marching orders. Still when we come to certain topics, I'm going to have to just write whole books on them. If I was going to, for instance, talk about the Passover, well, I could probably teach little snippets about Passover for an entire year. Doing it in the Context for Kids format. It's actually the next book I'm writing on, Jesus' Days of Joy, Passover to Pentecost, and that's going to take me quite a while to write. I just finished Context for Grown-ups, Kinship, Sexuality, and Social Identity in the Bible, and a lot of it's suitable for kids, no matter, how you raise your kids, and some of it is definitely PG-13 material, which is why I specifically designated it Context for Grown-ups. It's going to be stuff that you are only going to be wanting to share with your kids at your discretion. At the same time, it's stuff kids ask questions about. It's stuff that unbelievers ask questions about. Oh, well, why is it okay to sell your daughter as a slave? Well, that's what the language says. But when we look at the context of the time, it becomes clear that you're not really selling your daughter as a slave. It just sounds like it when translated into English. Why should a woman, have to marry her rapist? Those are hard, but again, it's the English translation. We've got to look at what it meant in the time. And, unbelievers ask these questions because they are looking for the Yeshua, the Jesus that is preached in the Bible. And they're not seeing him in the Old Testament. They're not seeing him in the Old Testament because of traditions, because of English translations, because we don't know the culture. And so it seems horrible when actually it really isn't. So I just finished that book. It's at my editor's right now. Then it'll go off to the formatters. I don't know how long it'll take, and I've got to re-edit it afterwards and all that. But this is going to tie into the New Testament. I'm going to have to teach about the 4 women in Messiah's genealogy right off the bat. First off, we've got Tamar. Now, Tamar is PG-13 material because we're going to have to talk about cult prostitution. Well, we're not going to talk about it in great detail. I mean, don't get me wrong, but it's part of the story. But we're going to talk about levirate marriage. We're going to talk about why Tamar is a righteous woman and not judged a sinner for what she did. I'm going to talk about the next one. This next one, Rahab. Rahab was a prostitute. But we got to talk about why she is righteous now and why, and we've also got Ruth. Ruth is a little bit easier to explain. Ruth is PG material, not PG-13 material. Then Bathsheba. Why was Bathsheba vindicated? I go into this in the other book, but I'm going to have to talk about it. Bathsheba is PG-13 material. Why was Bathsheba considered as innocent as a 1-month-old female lamb, whereas David was compared to a rich, greedy, horrible, evil person? So it's important to see these things. It's important to understand why these would have been presented to not only adults but to children. It's important to know when Jesus looked back at his genealogy, what did he see? Not what do we see? What did he see? And why would that genealogy have given him pride and attributed pride to him and not shame in the eyes of the Hebrew audience of Matthew, and even the Gentile audience of Matthew, because they saw the world in the same way. So anyway, instituting the rating system. This is going to give you parents a lot of power, and at the very beginning of the episode, I'm going to say, this is PG, whatever. You know, if I'm going to say, if it's G or PG, I'm not really going to worry about it so much. I'm just going to say the rating, but if it's PG-13 or R, I'm going to specifically say, kids, turn off the turn off the video. We're going to talk about this topic. Like, I'm not going to say, cult prostitution. I'm going to say, we're going to talk about Tamar and Judah today. Ask your parents if you're old enough to see that. And, I'm going to need your parents' help. Obviously you're going to have to monitor, but I want to serve the needs of everyone's kids, not just 5-year-olds, but 18-year-olds. Kids are kids. And actually, to be perfectly honest with you, the teenagers need this more than the 5-year-olds do. They're running out of time before, they're adults and, they're out of your home, and you can't force them to watch my ridiculous antics anymore. So that's what we're doing. That's this year and next year probably on Context for Kids, and I'm hoping it works out. My goal at this point is to equip your children in the hopes that one day, they'll own the same over 400 books that I have, and they'll want to be Bible scholars, but not everyone is going to be. Not everyone needs to be. Not everyone should be. But if I can give them, what I've worked for, and just give them kind of a way to, when they go into the adult world, when people tell them something that's just flat out outrageous, they'll go, whoa, that just doesn't track. They'll have options, okay? They won't have to just believe all the loony stuff that's out there on YouTube and on Googled pages where, they say something, they offer no proof whatsoever, but you're just supposed to believe it. Want kids to question everything, especially when it comes to our Savior. Because when we provide teachings and when we provide information about our Savior, it has to be above reproach. We have to have no urban legends involved. We have to be able to point to something in antiquity and say, I'm teaching this because they said that back then. Not because they say it now, not because we go, maybe, but because there's proof of it in the ancient world, and there's lots of proof in the ancient world. And I want your kids to know about it, and I want them to know where to get their start if one day they want to study all this stuff, like Crazy Miss Tyler, who is running out of room for books. Anyway, I think it's like in the movie Jaws. I think we're going to need a bigger house, more bookshelves. Anyway, so I'm going to get started with that soon. So parents, I need your cooperation. I need you to work with me. I can't make this work without you. And I can't keep your kids from information that you don't want them to have yet, which is absolutely your right. I don't teach doctrine. I don't teach your kids anything that's not your permission to teach. And you do that by guarding things on your end. So take care, and I will see you soon with Matthew chapter 1, which is probably going to take 6 to 8 weeks. Oh my gosh, yes, there is that much context in Matthew chapter 1. Anyway, take care, and we'll see you soon with Context for Kids, the book of Matthew. Take care.